Hello everyone, in this VTM we're going to take a look at how to get weapons from Maya fully playable and inside of Unreal. So we're going to begin with some models, we're going to show you how to export those models. Now, before I go any further with that, the models that we've built for this gun already have animation on them, they've already been skinned, which is, these are topics that we've already covered in other videos. But we're going to begin with these files from Maya. We're going to take them over into Unreal, get them imported in, get textures on them, do some coding, and get these completely playable inside of Unreal Tournament 2004. Now, with me tonight is my good friend Logan Frank. He's going to be doing most of the driving tonight. As you know, my name is Zach Parrish, and let's go ahead and get started by bringing up our Maya files. And right now, Logan's doing the driving, so take it away, man.
Okay. The first part of the model we'll be taking a look at is the third person, so let me load up the file for the third person mesh. So here we have just a simple poly mesh skinned to 2 joints. Simple setup, but it gets the job done. We just need to have some way of moving a gun around, and that's what we've got set up here with the basic skinning scenario.
Okay.
So you can rotate the joint around, and there you can see the gun goes along with it. So we want to be able to get this model, skeleton and everything, imported into Unreal Ed. We're going to be using the exporter that comes with 2004. But there's one thing we need to set up first so that the exporter knows how to handle this model and skinning setup and everything. So the first thing I'll do is, with the root joint selected, I'll go up to Character and create a character set. Open up its options, and let's call this LP Rifle Third.
All right.
Third person model, makes sense. So create the character set over that. Now we can take a look at the exporter. One thing, though, before I actually open up the skeletal exporter window, is I'm going to establish the connection to Unreal Ed. I already have Unreal Ed running, so it didn't take much time at all. It didn't have to launch the game. It just connected to the currently running instance.
Okay, cool.
So with that connected, I'll load up the export dialog. Now, it might have auto-connected if I had just gone into the dialog immediately, but sometimes it's nice to connect yourself just to make sure that everything's ready to go.
Okay, cool.
So inside the dialog,
I'm
we have...
repeating myself. Sorry.
So, inside the skeletal mesh export dialog, we have package and name. Name is whatever we set our character set to.
Sure.
But package is just default. We want to specify a package that we're going to be saving to eventually. So, from the drop-down, I'll say create new package. The package I'll create is LP Rifle Anim. So in the end, we'll have an LP Rifle Anim.ukx file. With that, we're just about ready to go. We don't need underscore to spaces because not only is this our own custom skeleton with our own names, we don't even really, we don't need to match to anything. Plus,
right.
We don't have underscores anyway.
Exactly.
So we're just going to leave that unchecked.
Cool.
So simply hitting export, result, export complete. Looks like it worked.
Easy.
So let me jump over to Unreal Ed now, under the animations browser, and drop down to the LP Rifle Anim package.
Okay.
Inside of here, mesh LP Rifle Third. And if I zoom in over here, well, there's our model.
Yep, there it is, but it looks like it's kind of laying over on its side right now.
It is. The plugin has some auto-compensation for Maya defaulting to a Y-up world. In our case, though, we don't need that. When I set this gun up, I was working in a Z-up viewport.
Right, you can go into the settings of Maya and set it up to a Z-up world.
So what I need to do here, since I already had it pointing the right way, is I'll go under the mesh, rotation, and zero out the yaw and the roll.
Cool.
And now I have the gun upright and pointing in the right direction. You want the gun pointing down the x-axis. One other thing to point out is if I turn on display bone names, and let me bring the mesh back too, there we've got our two bones that we brought in from Maya. So all's looking good. Now,
so let's take a quick look at those bone names real quick. One of them is named Root, and the other one's name is Bone Flash. So yep. I'm assuming Bone Flash is what we're going to use to add some muzzle flash to this guy a little bit later on.
Right, and if you notice, the actual location of that is where the muzzle flare would go. And yes, that is the location that we're going to be using to base the muzzle flare off of. However, we're going to actually use a socket from this joint as opposed to the joint itself.
Okay, and you can talk more about those when we get to that.
As a matter of fact, that's the last piece we need to set for the setup for the third person. If we expand the attached section, we have...
Okay, so we're there. Awesome.
We have sockets. What a socket is it's kind of like a placeholder or a buffer that allows you to attach to a point, and that point being based off of the location of a bone. However, you get a translation and a rotation offset from that.
Okay,
so that way you could say, use one bone and then make multiple offsets. And that way have multiple attached points, or simply just a point for attaching.
So if we were to add some muzzle flash directly to the bone, we wouldn't be able to adjust it?
No, it would work just fine to attach it directly to a bone. However, if you needed to tweak that, the only thing to do would be to re-import it, because you wouldn't be able to otherwise tweak the location of the bone.
I gotcha.
With an attached socket, you'd easily have the translate offset.
That's awesome.
So since we want to set up the sockets here, so because we're going to be using those to attach to muzzle flares.
Well, go ahead and maximize.
Yeah,
that
I think I'll
window.
maximize the animation browser and refresh the mesh tab. Now, let me add the first socket. So I'll hit add. The attach alias, or how we'll refer to this later, is going to be tip. The bone that it's going to be based from is going to be bone flash. And notice that I'm typing this in lowercase. If it finds a matching bone, it'll automatically put the correct casing in place.
That's pretty cool. Now, what about the name tip? I mean, is that specifically important? Do we have to name this tip?
It depends on how you're using it. For custom code, it's just something that you'll have to remember. It's something that you'll use later.
Okay.
In some cases, though, we're going to be using one class and expanding upon it.
All right.
That's actually using a tip socket.
Okay, so we're taking advantage of some pre-existing code.
So in a way, I am matching up to one existing class.
Cool.
So with that now, since this is going to be the point for a muzzle flare, we can actually go and test that out. Granted, this one should be lined up since the bone is right there.
Right.
But in order to see a static mesh, well, let me grab the scale tip. That's maybe 0.3 first. We have test mesh and test static mesh. This will allow us to bring in a mesh or static mesh and apply it to this, or visually place it at this socket for testing purposes.
All right.
So I'll go over to the static meshes tab and maybe load one out of XFX. We've got the minigun muzzle flash first. That should work. Back over on the animation tab, I'll hit use. It doesn't look like anything happened, but that's because this entire socket hasn't been applied yet. Once I say apply, there we go.
Oh, very cool.
Now, one note about the apply new sockets is anytime you create a socket or make a change to one, you have to apply it before the changes not only take effect, but whether they're saved at all. Meaning, if you were to create a socket and then save the animation package, you would lose that socket. You have to make sure that you apply before you save.
Okay, so make sure you apply those right before you save.
But in this case, we kind of want to tweak the offset. Like, we want to play around with translation, and every time we set something, we have to go and say apply new sockets.
It's kind of slow.
That's what continuous updates for. We turn that on, and now anytime something changes, immediately we get the results.
Very awesome.
Now, we don't need to adjust tip. Tip is supposed to be at the top, exact location of the top barrel. So with this, I'm basically done. I can clear this out of habit, apply, just in case I go somewhere else or have to close the package or something.
Right.
Now, I want to create a second attachment, still based on this bone, but lowered a little bit for the grenade barrel.
Okay.
So I'll go back up to sockets, add a new one, and this time the attach alias is going to be tip2.
Easy enough.
Again, bone, flash. Now, with this one, let me go in and set a scale as well.
And bring the scale huge.
All right, I'll leave it.
Now that's a gun right there.
Okay, but seriously though, just for tweaking purposes.
All right, fine.
Zoom in a little bit. Now I want to move it down. With continuous update still active, I can go under translation. And let's take the Z, maybe move it down a little, maybe -6. That's a little bit too low. The third person mesh is kind of small, so let's not right click. And I'll tab back over here. Wrong mouse combo. Anyway, let's try about -3. That looks a little bit closer.
That looks good. So it's a subtle motion, but it might make all the difference when you're looking at the gun from a distance.
Right, because the first person, or where the effects are spawning from, I mean, it just makes sense to have it lined up, especially since it's so easy. You have a joint to attach to.
Right.
Then you have attached sockets to basically place wherever you want, and take an easily adjustable value for those.
Okay.
So you might as well go in and place those out. Plus, it shows using different attached sockets.
Right.
Now, with both of those, since I'm done tweaking stuff, I might take the test mesh off. Maybe turn off continuous update, and make sure I apply this one last time. Again, just out of habit so that when I go to save this, I keep all the current settings.
Makes sense.
Now, with that pretty much covers everything we need for the third-person mesh itself. Brought the mesh in, aligned it correctly, and applied the sockets.
So that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to go back into Maya. We're going to get the first-person model and import it in as well.